That's not what the fans want to see. That's literally what the fans don't want to see. Do you understand? Like, that's not what they want to see. And that's not what the fans want to see. That's what the fans, I promise you, don't want to see.
Let's imagine you're a kid in an American school. It's break time and you walk into the lunch hall and you see all of these other kids and they're just in their groups. You see the cool kids, the debate club. It's kind of like Mean Girls, and you're thinking to yourself, who can I sit next to? Everybody's already in their established groups and you're all alone. Well, what happens if the weird kid that eats his lunch in the corner next to the trash literally is bolting towards you? He's running full speed, barging anyone in the way, almost slobbering at the idea of having a friend. He's not just a weird kid, he's the biggest bully in school. He's stealing lunches, he's stealing belongings, and he causes mischief in the whole school. What if that kid comes and asks you to sit with them? I mean, yeah, you'd have someone to sit with, but do you really want the pariah of the school to be your friend? Now, if you ask me, I would say absolutely not. I'd stay well away, considering how evil this kid is. But you've tried to get along with the other kids, and the answer to your question of whether you can sit with them is a resounding no. And they all turn to you and say the same thing: you can't sit with us. This, my friends, is the story of Somaliland. And in this video, we will unpack the very reason why Somalilanders are celebrating the fact that Israel has recognized them, and the potential ramifications that is because of this absolutely horrible decision. Now, before we can figure out why they're celebrating, we need to know, at least to some extent, the motivations of the Somali people, their aspirations, where they came from, and where they're going. I feel like this is a deeply controversial topic, and so we will have a disclaimer. The disclaimer is that I am a Somalilander myself, and I love my people, okay? I want to see us thrive. We're the same blood. My broader views on recognitions and things like that is that, quite frankly, these borders were drawn up by colonizers who did so in their offices in Europe. They have no idea what is going on the ground, nor do they understand about our tribal landscape. So we should all figure out how we can live together in a way that is unified and yet still sovereign. And we don't need to look far for an example of that. For example, let's look at the Gulf. They are all from different tribes, but they are all Arab, and they all have their own countries and enjoy sovereignty in their own regards. And I feel like we could do the same in the Horn of Africa. Why do we all need to be united when we are different but also the same? We are both Somali, but we are our different tribes, and we have different customs in different areas. In any case, I could go on about how we could all live together and live great lives with a Horn of Africa union, a unified currency, the idea of brotherhood, of the brotherly nations of Djibouti, Somaliland and Somalia living and working together side by side in like the most epic Marvel mashup of the century. I could always speak about that, but let's be honest, things happen in geopolitics. You remember what happens to all of those who wanted stability in Africa. Cue the pictures of coups, assassinations and more. So now that that's cleared up, let's just get started. Somalilanders are made up primarily of one tribe, the Isaac clan or tribe, and our tribal system is a way for us primarily to know one another, to know families. For example, when people are getting married, they usually do background checks when it comes to their spouse, if the other spouse is also Somali. So they will ask about their tribe in a way of knowing who that person is, whether they come from a good family. This example just shows how intricate of a web we have in terms of our tribe. It's just to know kind of what family the person comes from. This is also important in understanding the Isaac genocide. Listen closely, because the Isaac genocide is a pivotal piece of our story. But before we get into that, let's go a little bit further back in history to a critical period. Somaliland was under British rule as the protectorate of Somaliland. And this is a picture of the Horn of Africa colonized at the time. It's around the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. It's important to note, whilst there were infringements upon the people's self-determination at the time, a protectorate isn't a fully colonized state, so they can really run their internal affairs themselves, but when it comes to things like defense or foreign policy, anything external really, they would need the British write-off to do anything like that. And so whilst Somaliland was under the protectorate, Somalia was under Italian rule, which was known to be much more brutal, and Djibouti was under French rule, as most people know. What many don't know is that Somaliland actually enjoyed 6 days of complete independence before it decided to join with Somalia to become what is known today as Somalia to most people. And that, my friends, was the start of the end. This is Somalia under communism. Now, according to my mother, in the beginning under communism, things were relatively great. She told me that it actually was going pretty well. There was a push for literacy and education broadly. She remembers being taught how to use a computer. There was subscription for anyone over the age of 18, I believe. But slowly things became worse and worse. Siabara was the leader at the time, and he was trying this new thing called socialism. He tried to move away from the tribal system while simultaneously favouring certain clans and alienating others. Oh, the irony. And would a dictator allow for opposition? Absolutely not. You complained, you disappeared. You complained, you disappeared. You organised, you disappeared. You spoke about religion, and guess what? You disappeared too. The disappearances weren't quiet either. They were made loud, in our faces. They would line up religious scholars and they would absolutely disappear them. And this was all to subjugate the people through fear. Imagine the disgust. Word reached Barre about the opposition group from the Isaaq tribe that was growing in Jiddan. The SNM Somali National Movement was a group set up by Somali experts to overthrow Barre and restore peace to the north. They had decided it was enough. Barre was enraged and began oppressive regimes against the Isaaq people as a whole, a form of collective punishment. This is where the Hargeisa genocide began. As opposition grew, so did the iron fist that came down on the ordinary citizens who lived on the land. It was a door-to-door systematic campaign of absolute erasure of the Isaaq people. With the famous quote, "Leave nothing but the crows," a clear message of genocidal intent by the regime. So whilst it wasn't just the people of Somaliland who were going through difficulty under Barre, they did receive the brunt of his wrath. And so they fought for their independence, they fought for their freedom, their dignity and their self-determination. This is all to say that Somalilanders struggled and fought for their peace. And interestingly, what I found out when I was researching this, his son was being groomed to take his place when he died. And he actually tried to run for office, for Somali office in 2009 and came second. Now that was very shocking to me, which if we were united would be absolutely horrendous, re-traumatizing and utterly jarring. So the TLDR is Somalilanders were murdered by the president of Somalia, who wanted to kill all of the people of the north in the Isaaq clan for not submitting to the will of Mogadishu, of socialism, of repression. Somalilanders never wanted to be subjugated to another group of people ever again. It didn't work last time, and they don't think that Somalia will be equal in their governing because they literally weren't around 40 years ago. So they made their own place where they could govern in peace, and they have actually done so for the past 30 years. And that is where we are today, pretty much. Now, a few things have happened, the rise of Al-Shabaab and things like that in Somalia, but not in Somaliland. This is important. But there are reasons, like I said, why Somalilanders don't want to be a part of Somalia. One thing is Al-Shabaab and the poor governance. Let's be honest, we see bombs going off all the time on the news, whether it's from Al-Shabaab, whether it's from America bombing Al-Shabaab, or whether it's from other African countries having to step in militarily in Somalia to help out. Somaliland doesn't see that as a very inviting place to want to join with. The second thing, and probably the most important thing, is the history of genocide. Somaliland had independence for 6 whole days before they decided to take their independence and go to their brothers in Somalia and decide to go with unity. And the result of that was a genocide that was absolutely horrific, well documented and acknowledged by the UN. They don't want to do that again, and they've enjoyed relative peace. I say relative, but more peace than a lot of countries for the past 30 years. And the third thing is self-determination. The South people as a clan desperately want self-determination for themselves, to be able to govern themselves completely, wholly, and without interruption, without having to go through other governments as they did under the British. Alright guys, I took a quick break, but we are back. Okay, now that we know the history, let's get into the reasons why Somaliland was recognized. So one is the strategic importance to Israel. Ugh, I'm disgusted. Let's just power through this because it's making me sick. Whilst Israel is committing its brutal campaign against the Palestinians, it's not news that Yemen is making it extremely difficult for Israel to do just about anything these days, with attacking their airports, attacking their ports, military sites. Good job for whatever they want to do, let's put it that way. And it's not going down well with the Israelis, let's be honest, they're not very happy about it. And from Bedbedder Port, on a good day, you can see Yemen, and those things are not mutually exclusive anymore, guys. So if it is in the deal that they get a military base in Somaliland, which God forbid, it would make very clear the intentions of the Israelis and by extension the complicity of Somaliland in this. I hope that's not the case, but it is an attractive deal for recognition, especially for people who live for recognition. Which leads to the reason. The third reason that this was able to happen is the youth's discontent and disconnect from the outside world. I logged into Facebook, shocked and in horror when I heard, or I thought I heard, the news that we were recognized by Israel. And a family member wrote out their congratulations, saying, tagging the Israeli government. And wallahi, I don't think I've ever been so absolutely wigged and cringed out in my entire life. I messaged them immediately and said, Wallah, what is going on? And they said, we support our brothers and sisters in Palestine, but this is just business. So there's two things going on here. They don't understand that recognition with an actual contractual agreement means that it's not just recognition, but we are also required to do things for Israel. The Israeli eye will go towards that glistening Red Sea that's on our front doorstep. And the second thing is that they think that because Israel has now recognized us, because of this contractual agreement, that America will follow and then the world. And this is probably the biggest misconception. This is probably the biggest misconception amongst the youth of Somaliland as of now. They don't know that China has veto power and very much hates the idea of separatists. Let's just look at East Turkmenistan, Hong Kong, or even Taiwan. And naturally, they won't like anyone else setting a precedent. So with all of this being said, the corruption going on in government, the youth's discontent and complete disconnect from the ways of humanitarian law, the ways of international law, these have all made the perfect conditions, and obviously Israeli desperation, these have all made it extremely easy for such an agreement to come about. Now let's move on to potential ramifications for this. Now that we've spoken about how this agreement has come to fruition, let's talk about the potential ramifications. So the first one I would like to talk about is the fact that we in Somaliland do not have the capabilities to enforce agreement, for example, or adherence to the agreement. If Israel decides it wants a base, do that, or if Israel wants to breach an agreement, there's nothing to say that they would adhere to it, let alone the sovereignty of our own land, considering they don't care about the sovereignty of the Palestinians. The second thing is the moral ramifications. No, it's not a political decision around. And quite frankly, if we as Somalilanders are up Schitt's Creek without a paddle because we've decided to tango with the absolute devil, I think we not only deserve it, but should we then be shocked if no one helps us? The third thing, again, as I talked about, is the UN-China veto power. It's quite ignorant or misinformed to think that this move will lead to full recognition from the world, considering we've just shaken hands with someone that is hated by the international community, almost as a whole, unilaterally. Fourth, we've become an absolute pariah state to, if we want to be a respectable nation, we shouldn't make rash decisions that would step on the toes of our neighbours and of those who are deeply connected within the international community. And the fifth thing is the schism between expats and locals. Now I know there have been celebrations in London, in big cities all around the world, and not just in Somaliland and in Hargeisa. However, the majority of expats are not happy with this agreement. The majority of us have been boycotting. The majority of us are extremely pro-Palestinian, and the majority of us stand by our Palestinian brothers and sisters. That's it. And so this agreement has made it extremely difficult in terms of our relationship with our sisters and brothers in Somaliland to actually understand them, to be honest. So to be seeing our flags in Hargeisa flying side by side with the Israeli flag right now, as Israel is committing a known and profoundly documented, probably one of the most documented genocides in the world, it's very infuriating to a lot of us expats. And the sixth and the final point I will say on this in terms of the ramifications is the global impact. So we are now a global target. For example, we are now a proxy country for Israel, which is a proxy country for America. And so what I mean by that is, if they have any sort of influence or any sort of trade going on between us and them, it makes us a target with the Yemenis, with the Houthis. And should we be surprised if that's the case, if we're funneling oil, weapons, whatever Israel wants through our country? We do deserve the ramifications of that. We deserve that because we are essentially facilitating genocide and helping the genocider. A very long video, I'm sure, and it has been a huge shock for a lot of Somalilanders as well, so I don't want to be a part of those people who are waving the Israeli flag. Never, never, never. Free Palestine, as always. Free Yemen, free Sudan, free Congo. That's it.